Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Thank you for joining us for another JBosaCoHR podcast. On today's podcast, I've got two guests. We'll actually have a co-host, Mike. He's here again. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
How we doing?
We're doing all right. And then returning guest, we have Maison Leigh. Maison, thank you for joining us.
Sure. What's up?
I appreciate she is our resident yoga expert, and we're going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about how to de-stress ourselves. We're going to maybe talk about some yoga and involving it in that process. And I guess the best way to start is with Maison. Maison, can you define stress? Like, what are people going through when they experience stress?
Sure. So part of this is, based in science, and then part of this is just, I think, our general experience of stress, right? Mm-hmm. So when you go through stress, right, what sort of happens, right? What is sort of the basic part of being stressed? We are in a state of uncertainty, feeling lack of confidence. We feel out of control of, what is potentially coming our way. It could be your boss asking you for
Oh, don't. You're stressing me out right now.
See? Or it could be you're trying to get from, where you are to get to your flight so that you can go off to some wonderful land to de-stress or whatever it may be. But so basically your body goes through like a chemical reaction. And so through your nervous system. So your nervous system has a couple of sections, and that's your parasympathetic and then your sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. Right. So that means your body, the chemicals change. Say you're being attacked by somebody or something. And
like a cougar or a mountain lion, like we used to be.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So then your body chemistry begins to change so that your muscles are actually ready to be, to run or fight or do whatever it may be. So
I think Mike lives in this constant state, and he has been able to just look normal as he lives like that.
Well, stoicism.
He's actually smiling right now.
I'm a very relaxed person. All right, Jason.
You're like the Hulk, but with stress.
Just ready for when the shit goes down. All right.
Right. Well, for most people, they do not have that level of perhaps external control. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and then the parasympathetic is kind of the opposite. It's the resting version of this. So, things that sort of, get you to be calm and etc. But we're talking about the sympathetic nervous system for this particular situation. So in terms of stress, so that's basically your question.
Let's go into causes of stress. What is a main cause of stress right now, in your opinion? And then Mike, I'm going to ask you. But what is stressing us out? Because we're not experiencing stress like we normally would. Where if you outran that mountain lion, you can take a breather and not be stressed for a little while. So what's the cause of all this stress? Because it seems like we have a very stressed out society right now. Well, I think maybe what's your number one contributor, you think?
I think it's lack of control over anything.
Mike, would you agree, or do you have a counterpoint?
I think that's definitely relevant.
That's relevant, yeah.
All these horrible things are just completely outside of their control. And a lot of people spend their time telling other people how they should look, how they should think, what they should do, but they don't get their own act together and clean their room, get their shit together, as Jordan Peterson would say. And it causes people to just be unreasonable. And the media doesn't really help because they think that everything is going to be a disaster. It's going to kill everybody and this and that. But stress is naturally a part of life. It's there. It's there for a reason. It's there to perpetuate the species. And it shouldn't be something that's necessarily bad. It's just kind of there to keep us going as people.
See, I was going to chime in and say something about fear. Now, you can be afraid of the mountain lion that's going to jump on you, like that jogger. Did you hear about the jogger that just fought off a mountain lion?
I saw the story, but I didn't read it. I just saw mountain lion attack. And
he got mauled and survived in a fight to the death with the mountain lion. That's a type of fear that is relinquished after you're done with your conflict.
We need more mountain lions. I think that's the solution here. I
think we need less things to be fearful of.
Yeah.
When you're in traffic, you're fearing that you're going to be late for work. You're fearing that you're going to get fired. You're fearing that you will not be able to provide for yourself or your family. So I think fear is a big contributor to that.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is, but fear is, again, ultimately what? It is a lack of control.
Oh, man, she wins.
Yep.
I understand, there are a lot of contributing factors, but the boiling point is that stress is when you feel like you just I don't know what to do. What is the next step? And you don't have clarity, right? And you don't feel like you're in control. So, and fear is definitely a big part of that, right? And it is probably the number one factor to feeling like the lack of control, right? So if you don't have the answers that, your boss is asking for, or you don't have the answers, as to somebody isn't helping you, or you're not getting the information that you need, then you're going to get stressed. And that's not just external. It could also be internal, right? So as it applies to even yoga, right? So one of the things I was going to bring up is that yoga could be stressful for somebody.
Get out.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, of course, it'd be stressful because a lot of people just can't do what the instructor is asking them to do. It's difficult.
Well,
to be honest with you, I could use my mother as an example. I've been trying to get her a private lesson. Mm-hmm. I have a friend of mine, Lisette, who's offered to give my parents a private lesson. And my mom's kind of afraid of it.
Yeah.
Maybe she just doesn't want to look bad. She doesn't want to look unable.
Right. It's fear and lack of control.
And she doesn't know if she's going to be able to control herself. That's all right. Let's put it all together.
Yep.
So it's not just it's so that the part about yoga being potentially stressful for somebody. So it's not just not knowing if if you can do what the instructor is saying, right? But maybe you are doing what the yoga, teacher is, telling you to do, but you're realizing your body is, maybe not reaching, the way that it needs to reach, or it's not rotating, or it's, or something is going on, or even just maybe you're holding the pose for a certain period of time that elevates your heart rate, which elevates, again, changes your body chemistry, that thinks oh my gosh, I'm in this plank position, but I have no idea how long I can hold this.
So physical pain is stress. I think that's an easy one. Not often, but physical pain is stress.
But, yoga can be stressful. Absolutely. Especially if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, or you don't know what to expect, and you don't have the mind frame to, kind of calm yourself down and be like, it's okay. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to do whatever, and I'll do what I can and just see how you come out of it, versus expecting yourself to know more than what you already do, and then put that pressure on yourself about, and therefore stress, right? That that you just don't know, and that and therefore it creates that stress and lack of control feeling.
So if I can ask you a question, I remember last time we talked, I'm not sure if it was your philosophy or a yoga philosophy, but the philosophy was the least amount of pain possible. The path to least amount of pain.
Harm.
Harm. There we go.
Yeah.
So was that a you philosophy, or is that a yoga philosophy?
That is one of the branches of yoga philosophy, ahimsa, AHIMSA.
Thank you. We have something to look up.
All right. Do it, Mike.
Well, he doesn't have to look it up. I'm just giving everybody a note. So this is just good information for people that are listening.
I have search right now, so spell it one more time.
AHIMSA. Ahimsa.
Got it. Proceed.
So the least amount of harm possible. So it's a yoga philosophy. And
Yes.
Does that relate to stress, or is it just more of a physical thing? Or
the definition,
overall?
before you start, respect for all living things and avoidance of violence towards others. So it's related for sure. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, obviously related. So, but not necessarily, it doesn't have to be. Right. So.
Well, can I jump in for a second?
Of course, Mike.
So, is there an issue with people not kind of embracing the natural stress of being a human being, where they try to avoid stress as much as possible? And is there some kind of downside to that? Because so many people seek ease and comfort and comfy pillows and all this stuff, and they're not growing, they're not becoming stronger, they're just kind of stagnating. Is that a major issue that yoga can also address, or what do you think?
Are you asking me or Jason?
I'm
Or
asking
just
if
in general?
general question. Like, are we too soft, and does that cause more stress because people don't deal with the stress that can make you stronger? They avoid it, and they become weaker.
Can I go first? I'd like
Go
to go
ahead.
first. So
Yeah,
from
go
my
ahead.
own experience, well, my own experience, I'm literally saying experience. People need to experience things. And the more you experience, the more you learn. And when you learn about something, you can learn to have more control. So when you're not challenging yourself and you're confronted with a new situation, you're going to start stressing yourself because you don't know maybe the best course of action. But after you've practiced something over and over and over, you're like, "Oh yeah, this is easy. I got it." And then you don't even think about it. It's not even on your radar for stress. So I think there are a lot of very comfortable people out there that are not challenging themselves. Whether, like, when you sit in front of the television, that's not a challenge. You're just consuming information.
Yeah.
You have to get to the gym, or you have to go on a hike, or you have to learn something new that's difficult. So that would be my take on that. And then we'll go to Mason.
Sure. So there are obviously a big range of what stress is, right? And then there's the really bad kinds of stress, right? Like you live in a city or a country where it's perpetually being bombed, versus
Oh, yeah.
versus what you're talking about, Jason, which is like exercise, right? Which is
Yeah.
good for the body, right? So you go on a hike, or you go on a little jog, or you do something that physically, creates those endorphins, and it creates, you feel good, and also builds like physical strength and muscular, parts of your body. And, those are good stress. So definitely stress, needs to be a part of our life. So I agree with you that, you on Mike. So the thing with yoga, right? And this idea with stress, and it's kind of touching on what you were saying, Jason, about the going through an experience so that you know what it's like, and so that you can better manage how you sort of go through different scenarios, right? Mm-hmm. So yoga, right? There's the physical part, and then there's meditation, right? So meditation, as part of yoga, kind of gives you this this imaginary world, if you will, to kind of go through things before you go through them, right? So what you're talking about is actual experience. Like, I am going to go through this minefield of stuff, and I'm going to go through it over and over again until I am no longer stressed, right? But the thing is that people are kind of inherently lazy, right? And and most people do not want to put themselves through the minefield.
Once you acquire comfort, you don't want to really let it go.
Right. For a lot of people. For obvious reasons. No one wants to be stressed. No one wants to be in pain. No one wants to actually do these things. But meditation, right, when you're visualizing certain scenarios, right? So I'm going to relate this back to maybe like triathlons, right? Mm-hmm. So the sport that I do. So, there's something race start and swim, right? So swim start is often the most stressful part for many triathletes, because they're apprehensive about, how well do I swim? Is my, wetsuit going to hold up? There's a whole bunch of people swimming around me, and am I going to be able to like get through? Are they going to kick me in the face? Are they going to slap me in the face? Are they going to pull me down because they can't swim? Am I going to survive my breathing? All this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So if they were to, say, meditate on this kind of swim start experience, say 5 or 10 minutes ahead, right? Or for 5 or 10 minutes in general, right? And they sit there and they kind of stand and they visualize, okay, this is where I am, right? They close their eyes and they visualize where they are. They visualize, okay, I'm wearing this wetsuit, if they're wearing a wetsuit, and then visualize walking up to their start. Visualize, feeling their feet in the water, if it's like on a beach, or if it's on a pier or something, potentially just standing on the dock or whatever it may be. And then, listening for that, the cue of the buzzer or whatever is being shot to signal the start, and then envision how you're going to get into that water, right? Are you going to slide in? Are you going to dive in? Are you going to just walk in and run in? Are you going to dolphin swim out? Like, what are you going to do, right?
Can I relate this to a kind of focus? Because is this like focusing on the moment, or you're preempting your moment?
You're going through the whole thing that would potentially cause you the amount of stress that you potentially can't control when faced with it directly.
Gotcha.
Right. So you're kind of going through the parts that, there's a saying like, plan your race and race your plan. Right.
So never heard that, but I kind of like it.
So I think it's applicable to, a lot of us. So you plan your life and live your plan, right?
Hey, today I learned again.
something like that. So, so this idea that like, you kind of like mentally cultivate your mental muscles and your ability. And so you put yourself from a safe space through something that potentially causes you that stress and therefore the unsafe space, right? And you kind of calibrate yourself to those external stressors and find a way to not be stressed, right? So if you go over and over it through your mind, right, and through like this sort of visualization like practice, you'll get to a point where you'll have a set of tools, right?
So I think you're by saying this over and over. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, and I know a lot of my friends and anybody that might be listening to this, they don't exactly know what meditation is, but that sounds like something that you might do on a normal basis when you're confronted with something like this. So I think that's a good thing that you're classifying that like this is a sort of meditation. This is going to help you not go into an experience as stressed out. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes. So, I mean, as we touched on, last time too, a little bit, like, there's yoga and there could be like the woo-woo versions and, and there's, like I said, there's nothing wrong with any of these if it works for you, right. At the end of the day. Right. So there are different kinds of like meditations, right. There's transcendental meditation. There's, I think, One World meditation, or One World Academy. There are, there's a studio in New York City called Mindful. There is Headspace as an app. There are a lot of different things that sort of cultivate, a meditative mindfulness overall. So it's ultimately, to me, meditation is sort of like your ability to focus on whatever it is you need to focus on. Right. So if
Fair.
It's, the beginning of your race, if it's the end of your nose, if it's getting through whatever may be difficult or, that kind of thing. So it's a mental muscle exercise, right? That's what you're working on.
I forget when you say mental muscle, it's almost like you're telling people that is something you can work on. For the most part, I think most of us cognitively, we're finished, like especially as adults. Like you feel like you're just finished. Like here I'm an adult. I have a career. I learned what I learned, and I do what I do. But there is actually a continuation of what you know, and you can think faster. You can crunch numbers faster if you work at it. And I just don't feel like it's available. Like the reason to do that isn't around enough.
Wait, what reason isn't around enough? There's not enough
to exercise your mental capacity. I feel, I think that could add to stress as well. They're just not thinking. Like you get stuck in traffic. You do traffic every day. You do the same route every day. Why not find some shortcuts and think about it?
Well, you're saying more people at work aren't really stressing themselves and challenging themselves. They're just going through their motions and just pressing the button and just going home every day and watching TV. There's no like good stress. Well,
no, she's talking about cognitive abilities. Like meditating is actually like a muscle. You're activating your mind to think or not preempt. Well, this is a great stand. This microphone is stressing me out.
Fix it.
You guys go while I talk.
Well, hearing you speak, Mason, kind of reminded me of a bunch of different things. So just to kind of, express that, like George St. Pierre, he's a UFC fighter, and he's really big on meditation, and he's also very big on imagining himself in the fight. And he's like, everything that can go wrong, everything that he's very much obsessed with that. What can go wrong, and then training yourself to just deal with all the things that could go wrong in a fight. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of part of what our brain is for. I couldn't tell you the part of the brain. I think it's frontal cortex, whatever. I saw a video on this a couple of days ago that just kind of stuck with me, where that's part of our survival instinct, where we imagine what it would be like to be attacked by a mountain lion, imagine what it would be like to maybe deal with drowning or whatever. But that's part of being a human being, where it's a meditation of sort, just to imagine the worst case scenarios and then prepare for it. And
right.
A lot of people don't prepare for bad situations, and they're just oblivious to how bad life can get, and they live in a bubble. And that makes, when shit really does go down, they're just completely lost because they never train themselves. And a quick little anecdote on my end, I I used to be a volunteer firefighter when I was a kid. I was like 15 to 19, whatever it was.
Super cool.
And the problem with my experience was that when I was 15, I joined the firehouse, and I was, hey, man, I'm part of the team. Let's do this. And I was easily the worst firefighter there as a 15-year-old. And it pissed me off, and it stressed me out. I'm like, why are these kids like so much? They're beyond my capacity and everything. And it was a very simple thing. They were all third or fourth generation firefighters, and I was a first generation firefighter. They were little kids, and they were in the firehouse, and they were going on granddad's lap, learning about the difference between a Halligan tool and an axe, and what the spreaders are, and what a tower truck is. And I was just being exposed to it right off the bat. So I wasn't a particularly good firefighter for that reason, because I was just learning this right brand spanking new. And other kids have been doing it for 15 years at that point, because they were born at right next to the firehouse. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, they imagine themselves being good at everything right off the bat, but you need experience. You need to work your way up to it. And people, just in my experience, especially younger kids, they watch too many superhero movies and they think they're going to be great at something, when no, you got to spend 10 years getting good at something. Start young. Learn how to drive a car before you're able to drive a car. Just learn from a parent or something. And, like, am I making sense? Kind of like just gradually work your way up as early as possible to learning how to do things, and you'll be able to do it a lot easier than, hey, you never drove a car before, just jump in the car, and then it causes all the stress and people panic and this and that. And you can kind of relate that to other things. Slowly work your way up into things as early as possible. Teach kids how to wrestle at a very early age, rough play, that type of thing.
So I think the theme here is mental preparation and just exercising it more often. Like, you won't, a lot of times in life, you won't be 100% prepared for something. And even to the last minute, you'll maybe rehearse a talk or a speech or a presentation. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you're putting in the effort, the mental effort to prepare for it should make it less stressful. And I think that's the theme that Mason's expressing. Whether that's a little bit of a meditation, you're just focusing on what you're doing. You're remembering. If it is a presentation, I do that a lot. You're trying to remember your outline, your notes, your talking points, and the more you go over it, the more you feel prepared. And the more prepared you are, the less stressed you should be when you actually begin to present. And same thing goes with the job, right? Like, you as a firefighter, you didn't feel prepared. They were better than you. Why? And they had more time, they had more experience, and they were just constantly more prepared for the scenarios.
Yeah.
Well, I want to touch on something about that, though. Like, Mike, you said that you were wondering why you were such a bad firefighter, right? I don't know. For some reason, those words don't work for me in that situation for you. Because from what you're saying, it makes me feel like you expected to go in there and to be good, right?
What was this? Well, it reminded me of a quote from Game of Thrones where Robert Baratheon is talking with Ned Stark. You guys watch Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Yes.
I've read the first 3 books.
Oh, familiar with the characters, but it was comforting when I heard this, when Robert Baratheon said, "Remember me at 16, Ned?" Like, it was one of those things where the king is like, "Remember how incompetent you were at 15?" And my own experience was, I didn't know how to deal with being that bad at something right off the bat, because other things I tried, I learned when I was a kid and I was okay at. Does that make sense? Like, when you're bad at something, it's humbling. And then I didn't pursue firefighting after that. I just kind of grew out of it and then left. But like, it was one of those things where I realized that was a character fault on my end, because don't freak out on yourself because you're not good at something right off the bat. You humble yourself and get better, and slowly, gradually get yourself to get at a higher level. Know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's that. The 2 things I wanted to touch on for that is the level of expectation, right? And then your own level and ability to be open to your own learning.
Yeah.
Right. So most people, I feel like as adults, people become afraid of learning.
Yeah.
Right? Of trying things. Of just being like, let me go in, and it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay that you don't know how to do anything, right? It's almost like a self-judgment and a self-level of expectation that you can't possibly even meet for yourself, even though it's you. It's no one else has imposed this on you. No one said, Mike, at 15, you need to come in here and be the best, darn, firefighter in the world. right? It was your own mind. And then you started comparing yourself to other people, to other, the other kids.
Well, it
and
was
then
insecurity. It was a lot of weirdness going on at 15 because we're all disasters at that age anyway, so.
The identity crisis.
As a teenager, but that moves forward into adulthood, right? And into the kind of mindset that you have and what you're talking about, Jason, about how, people don't want to, train their brain, right?
It's funny. I'm a gamer, and I'm laughing at this because when I try a new game, I'm constantly putting myself into a new experience, and it's always that multiplayer moment when you hit play versus game, and you're going in for the first time. You're like, I'm going to get my ass kicked, and it's going to happen, and you have to deal with it, so I try to have as much fun as I possibly can, and I try to make it a learning experience. So like, what did they kill me with? How did I get destroyed this time? And that adds to the fact that like, I'll learn and at least enjoy it, and that's what I do to not stress myself out. But I used to like go to a multiplayer game like, I should practice more before I go in, and I'll practice, and I'm not ready for multiplayer yet, and I'll practice, and I kind of psych myself out, and I that could be relatable to anything new.
Yeah, people will psych themselves out from trying anything, and it doesn't even have to be like in competition with anyone else. It could be like just like getting on a plane to go somewhere, right?
Right.
Like, I've always wanted to go to China, right? Or I've always wanted to go to Nepal, or I don't know, insert any country.
I want to go there.
Right, exactly, the Annapurna circuit, right? For hiking, for anyone that doesn't know. But like, people put so much pressure on themselves about things that they don't know or that they don't know how to do, and then they just don't, right? And talk about like, I don't want to say, this sounds really harsh, but what a waste, right? You're here to experience everything that you could possibly experience on this earth, right? You were here so that you can live the full gamut of everything that is possible for you.
Mason,
right?
You're a little bit of an enlightened person because there are people that don't understand it. No, that's a thing. Like, I've learned that recently too. Like, you think get money, have a house, and do what you have to do, but those are objective goals. That's not necessarily making yourself better. Like you're just, you can get all the money you want and still be a shitty person.
Yeah.
You could be an awful, shitty, ill-tempered, angry, grumpy asshole, but you're rich and you've got things.
You have no one in mind when you say that, right? Okay.
No, I don't know really wealthy people. I'm just saying.
And you and some of them are total pricks, just so you know. So.
Yeah, but so in terms of like yoga, right?
Yes.
So yoga,
I wanted to relate to that. Yes.
Yeah. So again, meditation being a very like mental practice, right? And then yoga can, if you go to an actual physical class, right, becomes sort of the physical part of manifesting what and practicing the mental part, right? So you can imagine everything that you want to in terms of like how something can sort of like happen in your life, right? But the real test is to put yourself in some moderate, safe version of stress, right? It's like a stress test. Right?
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So meditation sort of being the passive version of this, and yoga asana being the active version. So when you go to a yoga class, right, because I believe it to be inherently meditative, right?
Yes.
If you allow yourself to not worry too much about whether you're doing this right or doing this wrong, or if your yoga pants, are see-through, whatever the hell.
Mine are always too tight. I just don't.
But live it. If you like your tight yoga pants, whatever, embrace it. It's all cool. But like, so you're going through different poses or different sequences, or it depends on the kind of yoga class that you're taking, right? And you should be physically moving. Most yoga styles are active, in my opinion, except for. Well, anyways, I'm not going to go into that. So, but they're active. And so as you're going through different things and you're going through the different ways that your body is, changing shape and moving and rotating and what have you, again, it'll bring up moments. Like I told you, yoga could be stressful, right? So as you go through, you could be like, oh, what was I doing in that, how can I meditate on this? Like, how can I get myself through these difficult things, but in a safe space, because no one's attacking you. You're not like being yelled at by your boss. Like this is, your children aren't screaming at you about like, mommy, daddy. Right?
This is your own challenge.
You have put yourself in your own version of sort of like stress, if you will, right? And so now you get to practice what you've meditated on.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And to not just relate this to yoga, because there are some people that still are a little skeptical about yoga and what it actually is. But for those of you that do work out, go to the gym, go for runs, you have to prepare yourself for your run, or you have to prepare yourself for your workout. And if you go to the gym, I know as a new guy before I had personal trainers, I was kind of intimidated because how the fuck do I lift that? What am I doing over there? You know, and am I going to hurt myself? What's too much? It's kind of the same thing. It's your own challenge. If you go to the gym and you're not competing at the gym, so going to the gym is your own challenge. You got to challenge yourself. But yoga is a good way to do that in a safe and very beneficial way.
Yeah, I mean, yoga is a system. It's a guide, right? It's a teacher. Right. So once we leave sort of like our academic world, right, where you have a structure in place, like I go to class and a teacher, teaches me something, and then I go out into the world and I try and apply it to my life or whatever it may be. Once you become an adult, right, after you've graduated college, for many of us, right, you kind of get into, you get a job, you do what society has told you to do. You go get your job. You work 9 to 5, you get married, you have children, and then that's sort of like it. And then it's like, and people get stressed out maybe because that's all there is, in their minds.
For a little while, I'll be honest with you, for a little while, I thought that was the case. Like, I'm an adult, I'm done learning. Now I do my job. And I was kind of miserable until I realized Mike showed me podcasts 3-4 years ago. And I'm like, wow, there's so much great stuff out there. I can't even look at fiction anymore because I'm constantly learning. Like, there's so much in nonfiction, factual, intellectual information. So
right. I mean, but you can learn from fiction too. I mean,
you're right. Yes,
mean,
you
Game
can.
Of Thrones, hello.
Yes,
right.
That's how I'm gonna rule.
But so we need. I think all of us at our various stages in life, we appreciate a guide. Right? Whether you want to, you can, people love having a mentor. There was a period of my life where I just like in my, 20s, I was like, after college, I was like, what would I give to have like a mentor to help me get through, some of this, my industry, which is crazy. Right. When my triathlon, journey started with team and training, and what I got paired with like a buddy, right? Somebody who had been through it before. Right. So, yoga with all its like, with the philosophy, the asana and, in the spiritual side, it's a guide, and like I said, I think last time, it's a lifestyle ultimately when and again, it's not about, the kind of water you drink or the leggings that you wear, but if you absorb bit by bit, the things that it's teaching you, it will become a lifestyle. You become naturally more open, you become naturally, more meditative, and therefore able to handle the things that kind of, that would stress other people out.
Jiu-jitsu is an important thing, I think, that everybody should do, like along with yoga, to be honest. Like they're related and they complement each other. But jiu-jitsu is one of those things where I only did it for maybe 6 months with my buddy. He had, place he went to for years, and I came in because I was working near him, and it worked out. But I want to go back to it. But anyone who's thinking about doing jiu-jitsu, highly recommend it, but understand that for the first 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is, you're just going to lose all the time. Like 100% of the time, these guys are just going to choke you out.
It's a new game.
Oh my God. But as an adult, I didn't have my firefighter insecurities, like, because I was very good at the gym getting beaten up because I just knew what was going on. Like, that you're not supposed to win. You're not supposed to be good. You're supposed to just take your beating, take your lesson, whatever it is.
Take your lesson.
And learn from what they're doing to you, because they're just like, why is a guy, I'm not a big guy, but why is someone significantly smaller than me consistently beating me every time, 100% of the time? And instead of getting mad, instead of getting insecure, you just figure out, oh, he's moving his hips a little bit. Oh, he's doing this. Oh, he's doing that. And then you learn and you get better. And I think a lot of people don't do things like yoga or jiu-jitsu because they don't want to look stupid. They don't want to put the work in, what have you. But the problem is that if you get good at jiu-jitsu or you get good at yoga, you'll get good at other things. And there's a line from, I don't know if it's Miyamoto or Miyamoto, if anyone knows, Musashi, the samurai. It's a great quote where he says, if you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything. And I think it's an interesting quote because my take on that is like if you're an athlete and if you learn how to play baseball as a little kid, learn how to play football also. It'll make you better at baseball. Learn how to play 5 different sports, learn how to run, learn how to do this, and everything will get better. You're not just going to be limited in one sport and then you get good. No, try different things. And a shout out to Josh Barnett, a UFC fighter who I really like because he's the type of dude. He's 6'4", giant, former UFC heavyweight. He's a catch wrestler, so he's an expert at wrestling. But he will go into like a Kyokushin karate studio with his white belt on, and he will sit with the little kids because he's a white belt at karate, and he'll just be with little kids, like sitting in the corner doing all their stuff, and because he knows he's a white belt at karate. So there's this giant human being who's a former champion who's with the white. Like, I'm going to learn Savat. I'm going to learn all these weird martial arts. I'm going to get my white belt, and I'm going to go right with the little kids, and I have no insecurities about it. And I think that if you kind of learn how to do yoga or martial arts or whatever, everything else will be so much easier for life. And so many people, they've just done their job, they're just done this, they're just done that. But if you're well-rounded as a person, and if you just do extreme exercise all the time, life is going to be so much easier. And I think we have an epidemic of depression. We have an epidemic of even suicides and all sorts of terrible things going on. And I think it's a simple solution. It's not an easy solution, but it's simple. Just work out, learn something new, challenge yourself. And one more little reference, because how my brain works. I like to reference.
Yes, you do. You're a quoter.
But James Hetfield from Metallica is someone I really look up to because he's one of the best musicians of all time, but he learns beekeeping. You know what I mean? He's the type of dude where I'm going to learn with my wife how to do beekeeping. And it's just like, this is some famous giant millionaire dude who just humbles himself. Goes, I never learned how to do beekeeping before. I'm going to raise bees. And it's just like, that's the type of person that will be successful in something like a musician because he humbles himself all the time. I'm going to learning how to be a beekeeper will make you better at being a musician. You learn patience, you learn this, you learn that. And I think it's an interesting way to think if you learn from successful people. Don't learn from unsuccessful people.
I might slightly disagree with that last statement.
Okay.
I think that there's something to be learned even from what you might categorize as unsuccessful.
Yes, don't do that thing.
don't
do what they did.
Yeah, learn from fools and from stages, as Dream On from Aerosmith would say. But go ahead.
Go ahead, Mason.
Right, no, but I mean, success is it's a hard word to actually define, right? Is success not...
Can I define it?
Define success? Go ahead.
I think success is striving for excellence every day. It's what you do every single day makes you a successful person. Meaning, like, if you do your workout every day, if you eat right every day, if you sleep, if you do it, like, that's how you become successful. But it's not a destination. It's part of the journey. You know what I mean? Like, it's about disciplining yourself to do the right thing or the smart thing every single day when you're capable. And I think that so many people treat success as a place you end up when it's not a place you end up. It's just what you are every day of your life. I could be wrong, but that's how I define it.
I mean, when you say something is a success, can't talk today.
Well, the word is shitty. The word is shitty.
I know. But you say, like, when something is a success, the complete process was the success. So if you built something like a gazebo with your carpenter buddies or something like that, you successfully built that gazebo. So it was the whole process. It's not the final product. And I think that's what you're getting at. So you can have a successful day. Hey, I got everything done. That the whole process of your day was successful. Does that add to your point? Yeah,
it does. But Mason, go ahead.
I feel like the word success contributes to stress in our society right now.
Okay.
Because everyone thinks and believes that they need to be successful. And when the word success kind of lends itself to people wanting to compare themselves and where they are in their station, right, to everyone else, right? And so I understand what you mean about striving for excellence, right? But that kind of striving could stress somebody out, right? And so then we're talking about, and then you touched on people who are depressed, right? So when you're depressed, I think you want the best, and I think in theory you do your best to get through your day, right?
Mhm.
But what that may look like not trying
So
to you.
you can
to the
have a
outside
day
person.
where you're like, I ain't doing shit today, and I was successul. You know, so I think.
I don't mean that.
Oh man, I was getting that vibe. I was like,
No,
These
I
are
just
very complicated things. These are all complicated words, and the
Yeah.
words sometimes don't mean the same things to other people. I mean, happiness means different things. Stress means different things. Love means different things. I mean, these are all very complicated words. You can interpret in 100 different ways. So there's no real black or white answer here. It's just kind of, food for thought. You know what I mean?
right. No, I agree. But I think also at the same time, words are extremely powerful in how we choose to use them, right? And I'm not trying to make it, into what is it these days where everyone is like overly sensitive about, quote unquote, overly sensitive about everything. What I'm saying is to leave enough room for empathy and compassion for the human being that potentially sits here and listens to you say something like striving for excellence and is like, I'm trying really hard to not be depressed, right? I'm trying really hard to, I'm taking my meds, I went to the doctor, but I still really feel like shit. And it's not I'm not going to do something. It's just I can't.
Sure.
Right? I
But if
can't
you're-
do whatever it may be. And so, it's I guess just the way maybe it was the way you put it.
Yeah.
But
Harsh way to put it. Don't get me wrong, but it's very subjective about what success is to begin with. First off, because some people unfortunately just have trouble, getting out of bed in the morning. If they get out of bed and they go to the store and they get a thing of milk, that's success in their brain, and that's good.
that's
because
what
some
I was
people
getting at.
Some people have issues with just leaving the house because of one thing or another. You know what I mean? So success for you or me or Jason or anyone else is very, very subjective. So that's something I just want to point out. I mean, like, success isn't I have a plane, I have $1 billion. Sometimes success is just having a kid that goes to sleep at the right time. And you guys like each other in the morning. That's success. Don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? Like, there's all sorts of ways you can measure success in your life. And the word, again, is weird because it means so much to so many different people. Maybe balance is a better word than success, because balance could mean I'm working too much, I'm not playing enough, or it could mean I'm playing too much, I'm not working enough.
If I may,
I think balance is better. But yes, Jason.
I was going to say, usually success comes with a goal, whether how small or how big the goal is or the objective. You have to have a set goal, because you might do something accidentally that's amazing. Like, it's not a success because you never decided to do that. Like, it just kind of happened. Like, I don't think anybody successfully wins the lottery. You're lucky, but that's not a success. Right? Well, I feel like I'm getting there.
It's funny because you mentioned the lottery, and I watched this video before I signed up with you guys about. You can look it up. I think it's just happiness on YouTube. It'll be one of the first things that comes up. But they said there was a guy who was testing an audience, and he said lottery winners versus people who find out that they're paraplegic or their legs don't work. And one would argue that the lottery winners are always going to be happier. Statistically, that's not correct. That there's a happiness parallel between people who win the lottery and people who stop being able to use their legs. It's identical. It's a very confusing statistic.
I'm very confused.
Well, essentially, you would think that people who win the lottery are happier 1 year after winning the lottery, but they're not. The happiness measurement for lottery winners and paraplegics were identical. It's a weird thing.
Okay, so like a year after, you're saying, like checking in with them.
Yeah. So It was a statistic to kind of bring up to point. And I'm done doing it justice. You guys can YouTube it if you want. But it's one of those things where I'll let you guys talk because I can keep talking.
Well, no, what's interesting about what you're saying to me, and having done no actual research on lottery winners, but what came to mind right now as you said that is, you said it's a year out from when they have, lost body parts and
when the dust settles.
when they've won money. But I feel like what potentially maybe mentally happens is lottery winners, a lot of them are people who have never had large sums of money in their lives, right? So they get all this money, and so they're happy for that month or whatever it is, but then they lose all that money. And so then a year out, they're right back where they were, or even in a worse and dire financial strait.
More to lose.
So not just that they had more to lose, You could argue that if you're losing body parts, right? Here. Okay. So, but on the other side is, so their perspective is how much they've lost, right? Whereas you said that they were paraplegics?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, whatever, wait, no use of their legs, essentially. So
right. Okay. Right. So what they're probably sitting there a year out, and I would lend this to probably meditation type of things, right? They're sitting there thinking about what they do have, right?
Exactly.
They're thinking about what they haven't lost, right? Mm-hmm. So they're thinking about, well, I still have, I'm still here, right? Oh. I can still, listen to music. I can still eat. I can still, whatever it may be, I can go join the Paralympics now, they have ways of self-improvement physically that potentially when you've lost something as, sort of superficial as money, right? That it's harder to replace, those two, I don't know, lack of a better word, objects.
Sure.
I just went through this with my friend Chris, who attempted suicide.
Let me make a quick note.
Okay, go ahead.
Then I want you to talk about that at length, because that's a very valuable topic right there.
Sure.
But some of these lottery people, the worst thing that's happened to them in their life was winning the lottery. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, like we were saying before, happiness, success, all these things are super subjective, because some people would have always said, I did not want to win the lottery. It was the worst thing that happened to me. But again, it goes back to the individual. But Brosa, the floor is all yours, because there's a very valuable story you're about to say. So.
Well, what I was going to say was, in terms of everything to gain and learn, my friend recently, Chris, he's on a podcast on this channel. He attempted suicide. And after he recovered and he went to a psych ward for a little while, I took him in for a week and a half. And we had a lot to talk about, and we did a lot of things. We went over to Cosm. He wanted to go see Alex Gray. But he realized from hitting rock bottom, and we actually joked about like concrete bottom because he did it in the Bronx. He's able to joke about it, which is great. He realized he had everything to gain from when you have nothing, when you come back from that moment, and your health is the number one thing to just heal. And after you heal, to get things together, he is just gaining constantly. And it's almost overwhelming. Like he didn't see when he was actually alive and capable of everything and living normally, but how much he has to gain now. It's incredible. So what you're saying, Mike, with the lottery winners and stuff, it's just your take on it. It's your perspective.
Yeah.
And
I mean, one of the weirder things that people just kind of talk about, kind of don't, is like, I think it's Sebastian Junger. He wrote the book Tribe, I believe it's called. I got to Google it to make sure I get it right. But he said that soldiers in war, after they come home, give it a few years, 5 years or something, they look back at the time they were in battle and they said it was the best time of their life, bar none. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense, because why would that be the best time of your life when people were throwing bombs at you and all this type of thing? It's because of camaraderie. It's because you were in a heightened state of awareness, and you appreciated life a lot more because people around you were dying.
Yeah, you had everything to live for in those moments.
And it's a strange thing, because we're so detached from reality, most of us, because so much of us haven't seen war. We have these cushy jobs, and remind yourself you're a primate living in the wilderness. You know, like you can put the concrete all around us all you want, but we need a body that's extremely tested. We need to have friends that we trust and like. We need to have good social structure. We need to have friends and family that we get along with. I mean, that's more valuable than anything else, I think. I mean, health and friends and family. Everything else goes out the window at that point. But I could talk at length about this, but if you guys spend it all,
I'm going to segue Mason back to yoga.
Yep.
And what I wanted to mention earlier was this yoga as a lifestyle. Once I started learning yoga, and there was the meditative mental aspect of it, and then there's the physical aspect of it, I realized there are so many instances that I can apply what I've learned in my life from yoga. And it's so overwhelming. That's why it's almost considered a lifestyle, because just because you leave your class doesn't mean you shut off what you've learned. There's mundane things that you can learn that you don't need every moment of your life. But after learning yoga, and not just poses, but the mental, not capacity, but it's your mental preparation or the argument that you have with yourself to stay in a pose. That stress that you give yourself in yoga, like you're practicing your safe space, you can apply that to a lot of things, especially when you're by yourself. I realize when I'm alone and I have to do a task by myself, I'm thinking about my yoga class and what I was doing in my poses. Like, you can hold this, you can do this, don't give up on that. Like, that's what's fantastic about yoga, is just the little conflicts that you have with yourself, and those conflicts are actually very healthy for you. And I was going to segue, Mason, back to, can you relate any of this with the physical aspect of yoga and how that could de-stress you and also put you, take away some depression?
I mean,
take away that mood.
Yeah, I mean, I think you actually explained pretty much what I, would have said, or I'm about to repeat more or less, meaning that when you go through your classes and exactly you have these like physical stressors that you have voluntarily put yourself into. And then when I mean lifestyles, absolutely, you take what you've learned and how you sort of react and how you've dealt with this, this created stress for yourself, right? Intentional stress, right? And you take it and you reapply it back to your normal everyday life, right? And so that's what I mean by yoga becomes naturally a lifestyle if you actually practice it. And then as you continue to practice it, you naturally begin to learn more and more and more, right? So it's kind of a state of remaining curious, right? So I was also going to touch back on the, I think, Mike, when you're talking about the white belt, that class in a second, but so remind me if I forget. but yeah, absolutely. Like, that is the gem actually of yoga, is that you can do these things and put yourself in a state that mimics chemistry wise, right, to your life, and then but practice how you respond to that, right? It's like, I hate plank, I hate plank, I hate plank. How much longer? How much longer? How much longer? Like, oh my God, we're going to side plank. Oh, like, how long? And then like, when are we going to get to the other side? Like, oh, breathe, inhale, exhale, right? Like, breathing your way through, part of it, and controlling your breath, which is, probably the number one resource that you have in controlling, your emotions, your mood, your physical actions, right? Because when you elevate your breath, you begin to kind of, if you will, your respiration is sort of like a hyperventilating situation. So then you're like, yeah, you want to get at me? Like what? Like then that whole fighting thing, again, the body chemistry changes. So if you can control, breathing, right, and the way you breathe, and therefore able to keep your mind and your brain, if you will, with the right amount of oxygen and et cetera, to be able to function and think clearly so that you can execute, the most ideal set of actions for your given situation. Right?
So I was going to say, I wanted to relate this to traffic. Okay. A lot of people are in traffic by themselves. If you're commuting on a bus, it's a different story because you're not exactly driving and you can engage your mind with music or a podcast or a book. But when you are driving in traffic, and I do this all the time, I realize that people turn into creatures when they're driving. Like you start getting hunched over and you're like on the wheel and like, what are you doing? You start getting mad at everybody. But then like if you open yourself, this is one of those yoga things, like you'll always open up and you'll take your breaths and you actually make yourself healthier in that moment. And I'm telling you, I refer to yoga so much in situations that stress me out, and I can just diminish the stress because I'm like, oh, that's because I'm hunched over. It's because I'm not breathing enough. That's because I'm not actually thinking. I'm just being a prisoner to the traffic where I could be doing something to enjoy, not necessarily enjoy the traffic, but experience something else while I'm in traffic.
Right. But that's great. That's exactly, how you should take the things that you learn in class and apply it to your own life. Because what's the point of it if you can't use it in the rest of your life, right? Yeah. Why are you going to yoga? Why are you even doing that? It's great that you feel great while you're in there, but if you don't feel great or don't know how to take the things that make you feel great in class and apply it to the rest of your life, then, you're losing out, right? Yeah. So I have a suggestion for you on the traffic, right? And perhaps it doesn't necessarily pertain to everyone because, living in the tri-state area, traffic is sort of a nightmare all the time. But
look at Mike. He's living it right now.
He's like,
this for tomorrow.
But here's a potential suggestion, right? How bad would it be if you left an extra 15 or 30 minutes earlier than you normally would to get to wherever it is that you need to get to, right? So you're building in time, right, for yourself so that you don't get stressed out that you're running out of time, right? And then when you get there, you should hopefully have had a less stressful experience getting there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, what's worse? Leaving, does it stress you out more to leave the 15 or 30 minutes in advance or to sit there in traffic screaming or, clenching or wanting to have violent images go through your mind? Like in that situation, what is the path? What is the ahimsa, right? Who gets less harm? You? Because in that situation, you're causing yourself harm by being stressed out like that, right? Nobody in any other car cares what you're feeling in your car.
No, not at
right?
all.
Not at all, right? So you're creating harm for yourself. So find a way to decrease that self-harm.
Yoga instructors are wonderful people, Mike. Are we realizing that?
I'm going to try hard not to curse out anyone that cuts me off on the highway.
Yeah, road rage is such a thing. Like, I used to have it, and if my dad ever listens to these, my dad is retired, and he still has road rage. And I'm like, Dad, what are you in a rush for? Like, that person cut you off. Let them go. They have to do something. Like, it's cool. You're not in that rush. Whoops. And it's just hilarious because he's retired, but he will still have road rage. So...
Yeah. I mean, I try to drive like an old lady for that reason because, I mean, it's not worth it, but it just drives me insane when someone just speeds and cuts you off. And it's just like, you need some yoga in your life, dude. Like, you just got to calm down. And
but why even notice it, Mike?
I don't let it get to me. I've reached that point. I'm too old. Like, I don't let it actually get to me, but it mildly.
You notice it.
I do notice it. And there's nothing wrong with noticing. It's danger that you're noticing, really. You're noticing, like, if I don't go in this middle lane, this guy's going to hit me if I don't. So you have to be in a heightened state when you're driving. Like that's neither here nor there. But I just everybody would benefit from yoga because everybody just needs to chill the fuck out. Taking a subway, it's an adventure, all right? Because
look, I ride my bicycle to avoid the subway.
I get it.
So that I don't I build my de-stressors into my life.
No, but the point I was going to make is that it's so surprising. We all have subway adventures for anyone who travels on the subway, but surprising thing is how chill it is because you can go a week without a problem on the subway when everybody around you is hyper stressed. Like if you go 1 week without an incident on the subway, that's
okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Like it should be every day there should be some kind of fist fight on a subway, but there's not. Well, you know what I mean though. Like it's an abnormal situation for someone to take a subway, but we develop a Zen type thing when we're there because we just, hey, the 7 train's delayed again. We just got to wait it out. Okay, yeah, and everybody's
I think that you're in the minority on that one, Mike.
Well, good for him.
I was going to say, I think most people are fairly stressed.
The time they're chilled. They're pretty they're just going through the motions and they're doing these horrible yoga poses on the subway, by the way, because you're holding on to the thing and you're like,
yeah, you're right. You're like tense and holding on to handles and bumping into people. So you're like tensed up so you don't invade people's personal space.
For sure.
I've been there.
I'm amazed that people actually keep their shit together on the subway. Every day I'm amazed that there's not a battle on the subway every day. Like a legit lead pipe to the face battle on the subway. Does that make sense?
I mean, it happens. I think people reach their trigger point a lot on the subway because there's so many videos on the internet of people just losing their shit on the subway. Like it's the breaking point. Like I just want to sit down after my day of work and then just one thing.
Everybody who travels on the subway knows the feeling when you don't get a seat on the subway.
Oh, yes.
When it's so packed and you're just like, I have to just ride it out. And it trains you to be more patient because you're like, well, I'm going to find a place to not be in the way and I'm just going to grit my teeth and deal with it. And it's a way of meditating, I think, taking the subway. If I had to say.
Well, it is good practice for applying, right? Everything that you learn in a yoga class, because yes, definitely, the subway is not my friend. Like for me,
not mine either.
It is a place where I do have to practice a lot of. I don't want to use the word restraint, but perhaps some restraint.
Okay. I want to segue into the more physical aspect of yoga here.
Yes.
And so I want to ask you, because I usually explain to people now that I've done yoga, they think it's just, stretchy, bendy stuff. And it's almost like a waste of time. Like, go to the gym. And I tell them, well, actually, you're missing the point, because yes, it's stretchy, bendy, and you're holding these poses. It's different kind of exercise and different kind of stress. But I tell them it's almost like when you wring out a rag and you're trying to wring out all the water in it. That's what you're kind of doing to your body when you do yoga. Now, maybe that's just me, and maybe that's how I perceive it. But what is the physical aspect that yoga gives you to de-stress your physical body? We've been talking a lot about meditation, how we think about situations, but what is yoga doing to your physical body that de-stresses you?
Well, I'm not sure I follow exactly the rag wringing there, but if that works for you, that imagery, that's cool.
The water is the stress, so if you're going to wring it out, I mean, I feel like going through all the motions of yoga kind of just
after a yoga session.
Get out all that body stress.
Yeah, I'm good.
Right. So
I don't know what I'm talking about, Mike.
I think you do, but just don't let Mason know that you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, thanks.
What?
Hear us? What?
Didn't hear anything. So, all right. So yoga. Okay.
Physical yoga.
Right. Physical yoga. I understand. So, most of us, right, we kind of move in a forward motion, right? So we sit and maybe we lean forward, maybe we lean back into our chair sometimes, but most of us are kind of in a crunched and curled and walking forward kind of motion, right? Our body generally, right?
Yes.
So in yoga, hopefully in the classes that you take, go through all the possible motions of your body, right? So that's forward and backward, side to side, and like twists right and left, right? So I'm speaking in terms of your spine, right? You can kind of like forward, you can go backward, you can bend to the side, you can bend to the other side, and then you can twist, right and left.
We're going to be able to make an internet song out of this. If I edit this the right way. Continue.
So because generally why do twists feel so good to so many people? Because we don't spend a lot of time twisting, right? A lot of people don't, right? So twist and shout, right? It's a good song, right? So flexion, as defined by science, if you will, is basically going towards fetal position, right? So in general, it's like, becoming what a baby would be inside of the womb, right? So, and then there's extension, which would be in the opposite direction. So things like, moving towards like a back bend, or if your leg is stretched out behind you, like say like in warrior poses, in warrior 1 or 2, like that back leg is in extension, right? While the front leg is in flexion, right? At the hips, right? So the things that sort of move you in directions that you normally don't go in, and therefore you're practicing and you're experiencing, right? It should hopefully make you feel, just physically better. And so therefore you're not as tense, right? And tense, it also equals stressed, which, is therefore, and a de-stressor.
It seems so simple when you put it like that. Like just moving like your body's supposed to move and doing every movement that you're capable of doing would de-stress you. But there's people that don't move at all. We have escalators. I was talking on the set. We have backup cameras now. People don't even have to turn in their car to look backwards. They're just looking at a screen. So you sit all day. When you back up in your car, you just have to do this, and you're going somewhere. They don't use their bodies.
Yeah. Even like your shoulders, right? So you can, they can go up, they can go down, they can go forward, they can go backward, right? So like, up, down, forward, backwards, and then obviously you can twist them a little bit too. But, it's just, people don't move. People don't move. And one of my yoga friend teachers, who's also a doctor of physical therapy, puts it wonderfully, where it's motion is lotion, right?
Hey.
We have joints. Right, motion is lotion. Her name is Dr. Ariel Foster, so I'll give her proper credit.
All right, there we go.
And she, we have joints. They were meant for mobility. And if you do not move, then you're just a vegetable, lying around doing nothing, right? You were meant to move. And if you understand that, you really inherently understand that you are meant to move, then you would move. It's for your health.
I was talking to Chris, and we were talking about like our body types, because me and him kind of put on a couple of pounds. We're a little fluffy and round, and I could say I'm a thick man, you know. We were saying that we're here to traverse the planet. We have a planet, we have to hike, we have to go up hills, we have to go down hills, maybe even scale walls or climb trees. When we don't do that, it's almost like our human nature. When we don't do that, we're denying our human nature. And I feel terrible for people that live in urban cities like you guys, where you don't have.
Because I don't move at all, by the way.
you traverse the planet. You force yourself to traverse the planet, but you're in a concrete street, flat. You know, things are like right angles and stuff. Still not the most natural thing. Where you're walking on concrete. You're not walking on a dirt path or in mud or whatever the case may be. What I'm getting, you move, Mason. I'm sorry. You're looking at me like, what are you getting at, Jason? I'm just saying.
Talking about me, Mason. Relax. Don't worry.
Traverse. I'm talking about the normal urban dweller. See, you do a great job, Mason, of not doing that. Where the normal urban dweller will get out of their house, they'll go down some stairs or an elevator, even worse, right? So you take maybe the most 30, 40 steps to get to an elevator. You take that to a subway. Then you're crammed with people, so you're kind of like tense because you're trying not to invade anybody else's personal space. Then you get to work where you sit. Then you're crammed in something else again. And then you go home and you don't move. That is not traversing the planet.
Well,
and that's what me and Chris were getting at. Go ahead.
Imagine Manhattan without Central Park.
That's a prison. It's a prison.
I know, but Central Park, for all its faults, it's a terrible substitute. But for the sake of your mental health, people in Manhattan need to go to Central Park once in a while. Go to any park and experience green trees and
green
a little
space.
bit of a walk and everything.
It's a big thing in city planning. Yeah.
I mean, you can't not have a park. You can't. I mean, it's a nightmare to think about life without green trees and water and all these type of things. And I mean, I have no data to back this up, but I'd say that people who are in the wilderness more are just going to be happier than people in.
Well, there's what is the trend right now? Forest bathing.
Is that what it's called?
I think it's forest bathing.
I haven't heard this. But
maybe it's Japanese, but might be trickling into our Western world a bit. And I think even psychologists are prescribing, if you will, time in nature to help those that are having some, psychological, or therapeutic needs, right?
Sure.
But you were saying that whole process, that whole journey from going home to work and then back again, right? It goes back to stress, right? I think that going through there isn't a part of that whole journey, at least in the urban, or jungle that you call it, that is not really peaceful.
No.
Right? So the reason why I think people go home and they're like, they don't do anything is because they have mentally exhausted on some level their resources, right? So to think about having to do something like go to the gym or even take a yoga class, which would be beneficial, but that effort, right? Because they put in all this effort to just try and do the thing that they thought they're supposed to do.
Hold it together all day.
Right? Hold it together to be an adult. Yeah. Right. And then they get home and they can't do anything else because now they have to attend to their children or their significant others, or if they have live-in parents, or maybe they have stupid neighbors, or you have dumb roommates or whatever, people they're living a huge life filled with stress, things that they cannot control as much. Right.
Quiet despair. It's not the best.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, and maybe that builds rage and anger and all kinds of things inside. And they have, they should obviously do some yoga or something that will help, help release some of that and shift sort of where the energies and the focus is sort of happening. But, people don't. And
yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah. So.
Do you want to finish your thought? I apologize.
No, I just remembered that I didn't talk about the children in the white belt.
We can talk about that now, but I had a quick little snippet.
Sure.
So, I mean, how do you feel about stressors being necessary? Because something I've seen a little bit of is there's been a movement to have little kids. Like, I think it's a YouTube video from like Central Europe somewhere or something, where little kids are in like their bathing suits. They're going out in the snow and they're just rolling around in the snow and then they're coming back. And apparently that's super good for you, like Wim Hof type stuff. If people don't know
Wim Hof. Yeah.
Like cold weather therapy, where you bathe in ice water once a week or something, just to kind of get those that's stress in your life, because that stress causes cold water proteins. I think they're called cold weather proteins. I don't know anything about this. I'm talking complete nonsense, but I think it's a brown protein or something like that. That
Brown
really,
fat.
Character.
say that again. I'm sorry.
Is it building character?
No, like actual like health, like actual like good fat in your body that's generated because you're causing cold weather in your body. It's what's the word? The cold weather therapy after a workout, where you actually go into a freezer for 1 minute just to have your body repair itself with whatever cold weather proteins are generated. So my point is this: stressors are necessary to be a healthy person, and we just avoid it sometimes. So it's kind of like the yoga, cold weather, even hot weather. I think like saunas are freakishly good for you, apparently.
Dude, I feel a lot. You know when you get hit with a really cold gust of something, you're like, whoa, right? Everybody does that. You're like alive when that cold air hits you. And I think that's part of the shock. That's, you get over it, but you're woken up. That gust of wind or that cold experience you had just woke you up. Like all of a sudden you're way more conscious of what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
I do believe that stress is some good, some level of stress is obviously good in our lives. We do need it because it helps us grow, to learn. It's an absolute necessary part of life. But I think in the journey that you were describing is that there hasn't been room for peace, right? And so it goes back to balance, right? There needs to be something that helps balance all that stress, because if it's nothing but constant stress, and then it goes, even like you said, you're surprised that people don't break out into fights all the time, because we know that subway is a perpetual stressor, right? And that whole process of just getting from home to work is it's a stressor. So, yes. People talk about living in LA or, living in New York City. And then people are always complaining about the cold in New York City. And then people are talking about the great weather in Los Angeles. And if anyone lives in Los Angeles, I don't know, take this with a grain of salt, if you will. Okay.
Here we go. Give her an out.
Los Angeles, right? It's pretty much like 80 degrees year round, right? 70 to 80 degrees, maybe it creeps up a little bit into the 85s or something, but mostly sunny. Although in the last couple of weeks, apparently there's been a lot of rain and people are unhappy about this.
They
right?
need that. I would not. They need water.
I agree. But to me, living in New York City, one of the I love living in New York City, and actually I love winter, right? I love winter because I love snow. So for me, it's no problemos. But
can you come shovel my driveway, please? Thanks.
I didn't say anything about shoveling. I just said I love the snow. But, going through the seasons, right, it means that we mentally go through different experiences. We think about different things, right? And because we have sort of like a seasonal rotation of experiences, New Yorkers are just better equipped for certain things, in my humble opinion, like, being in stressful situations. But it also keeps me grounded and grateful for things like I have a house and it's warm, right? Mm-hmm. So things like the super cold, I actually fucking love it. I love, what is it? We were running the other day and it's cold, it's dark, and it's wet, like last week. So my team was out there, we were running, it was like in the 30s, right? It was raining and it was dark. 3 things that normally make most people be like, I ain't doing shit.
And absolutely miserable.
And absolutely miserable. Exactly. It was kind of cold, right? My hands were cold because I didn't actually have gloves and I didn't bring all my right gear. So I was actually in a t-shirt with like arm warmer type things, these really thin things. But I survived. But, it also feels great, like to know that like I can overcome mentally.
You survived, yeah.
Yeah, I survived, but that I can overcome these things. So, if that's one of the worst, kind of situations that I could be in for any type of physical training, and that's, again, self-imposed, right? I didn't have to do that, right? Then when the rest of life shoots me something, right, that's difficult, I am just much better equipped to handle it.
Sure. Well, because that's interesting that you said that, and I'll agree with you 100% on that. Yes, I do think people are happier in the seasons than they are 80 degrees all the time, because you can look this up. I looked at this a long time ago, but Beverly Hills apparently has extremely high rates of depression and pills and all this horrific things for one reason or another. But people, there's a great documentary.
No one is safe.
there's a great documentary called Happy People
Mm-hmm.
by Werner Herzog, and it's ridiculous because imagine like the worst situation ever, like Arctic, riding a snowmobile for 7 hours and this type of thing. There's this tribe of people that he studied, and they were the happiest people ever. Like no rates of depression, live long lives. I mean, community and all this thing. So there's something abstract that makes a person happy, and it has nothing to do with whether or not it's 80 degrees all the time. You know what I mean?
I mean,
there's no change in LA. It never it's like, and so you're always just kind of in this like complacent, like middle of the road, like. I mean, I don't know. It just is boring as
almost too
shit to me.
comfortable. It's almost like if you're just comfortable and you never challenge yourself, then when the challenges do show up, you got knocked out of your comfort and you're gonna really stress about it. These guys that are freezing in the Arctic that you're talking about, when something good happens, when they're gonna survive, or I don't know what their challenges are daily, but I'm sure that because they can overcome each day, which is kind of rough, they're happier for it. Whereas if you just go out and everything's just like easy and nothing stimulated you to be a human being, you're going to be miserable.
Right, because you're utilizing, the tools that you inherently have, right, to live, to survive.
Yes,
and so I think that when you're talking
human nature,
right, when Mike was talking about the guys in the book, was it the book that you're talking about, in terms that they were talking about the best time of their lives is when they were like fighting in war?
Yeah, Sebastian Junger for the book.
Sebastian Junger, right. Because they get to, figure out and use themselves, their bodies, this tool, right? So they're like, oh my God, I'm doing this and I'm, mentally, engaged, and I'm physically engaged. And so you're learning the capacity of what is possible, both good and bad, right? Wow. And so it's, when you're doing all of that, it's just so much more interesting. And I think when you engage your mind, especially, right? I think there is a level of happiness. Like the thing is that people, they should be curious. There is, and that going back to learning and stuff, right? Be curious. And somehow people have lost that tendency to be curious about things, but it's also a part of them. It brings them happiness to learn something.
Yeah.
Right.
Sense of accomplishment too.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to wrap this up, because now we're hitting a full circle. And the points that we've made,
Jason, what are we doing? I get to 3 more.
No. So the points that we've made, I feel like keep learning. Because the more you learn, the more you'll be prepared. The more you're prepared, the less stress you'll engage with. Move your body. Whatever you're doing, move your body. Keep learning. And what else am I missing? Because I feel like we're really wrapping this up. Like, to not be stressed, keep learning, move your body. What else? Make some bullet points.
Apply it to your life.
Yeah. I would just add, have a really good diet. Don't eat garbage.
Oh, right.
Work out.
About eating.
Do what Mason tells you. Do what Mason tells you, and do a lot of yoga, do some jiu-jitsu, do a run. Just work your body as hard as you can every week. And don't be afraid of the cold weather. Don't be afraid of the hot weather. Don't be afraid of reality, because reality is going to make you stronger and make you probably happier at the end of the day.
Be healthy and challenge yourself.
Right. And let go of your idea of other people's expectations for you.
I think that would be a healthy thing, yeah.
Yes, but to really, to put that, like, I think a lot of people have, they put onto themselves what they think other people will expect them to do. Right? So.
I'll agree with that.
All right. Lessons learned.
Yeah.
Let's go through it one more time. Keep learning. Move your body. Be healthy. Give yourself challenges. Yeah. That's it, right?
Nice little mantra going. I like it.
And be around children.
Thank you.
Yeah, being around kids and dogs.
And being around children.
But that's healthy for you.
Yeah. Well, being healthy is so, like,
there's so many
generic.
things about being healthy.
Right?
I'm just saying. We're just zipping it up into a Ziploc bag and throwing it at everybody that's listening.
Right.
And that's a good mantra. I'm going to do that. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and just keep going over my 4 bullet points.
In the mirror every morning before work.
You can put it down in the show notes.
And Mike, we're going to do some Wim Hof stuff, okay?
You want to?
Yeah. My cousin in Florida is all about it. Like, he takes a cold shower every day. It's like, and he has to psych himself up for it. So that's a challenge. I'm going to challenge myself.
All right.
Look at Mason. No cold showers for me.
Well, no, it's not that I'm against cold water per se, but out of all the things that I, do in life and put myself through. Like, you know, that polar bear challenge where people like on New Year's like to go jump in Coney Island, like practically butt naked. I'm like, no, thank you.
But they're alive after.
I'll tell you one quick little blurb though.
Go for it.
Many years ago, I went to the Adirondacks in the winter on a backpacking trip.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't great. It was pretty miserable. But when I got to Civilization with my two friends, we went to a diner and we had chicken noodle soup and chicken fingers with French fries.
So good.
Of the greatest meals I've ever had in my life.
I love hiking in cold and going to eat after.
The best.
That sounds amazing.
I'm going to close it with that.
Yep.
All right.
Same here.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us talk for however long we talked. And just subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to wherever this is. Keep listening. And as always, we want your feedback because we will probably talk about the topics that you give us feedback on. And with that said, thank you and see you soon.
Thanks.